Well, that was a fun game. I know I'm kind of late to recording this. You're probably not going to see this until the day after, but it's nice to win two in a row for the Jazz. Like so far this year, it's been rough. I think they're after this game like 6-11 or something like that this year. I don't know. I'll have to go double check that. But great win against the Nets. Obviously, the Nets are doing too great themselves right now, but it's a good win. A 23-point win against a playoff team is always a good win. Really, a 23-point win against any team is a good win. But love to see it. It was garbage time from almost the tip. The Nets were never in it. The Jazz got off to a big lead real quick. And I'm since the Jazz, we know they're kind of beat up right now. We're not really seeing the team that we expect to see in the playoffs, assuming everyone gets healthy. I'm not actually not going to analyze the team stats too heavily. I want to spend a lot of time on the players because I think there's a lot of interesting things that we learned about a lot of the Jazz players in this game, I'm also not going to spend a ton of time on the game. It was a 23-point blowout. Uh, the players were kind of, I don't know, they weren't, and I know I'm going to talk a lot about the players, but you could tell there were times where normally you give a little bit more of a defensive effort on some plays, but when you're up by 30, you let them get a layup every now and then because you know you're going to beat them. So it was kind of garbage time, like I said. But I want to go through a few Jazz players, some things that I think we learned about them. Obviously, like I said, the Jazz are shorthanded. Gobert is still out. Clarkson was out. We know Ingles is out for the season, um, which is kind of interesting. We're trying to figure out, like the Jazz are trying to figure out who's going to fill that spot. How are they going to manage the minutes from there? But first, I want to start off with Donovan Mitchell. It's his first game back in a long time. He had an excellent game, 27 points, 6 assists. That's a mouthful to say, and 3 rebounds. So great game back. He looked great, and I want to talk about the eye test with Donovan Mitchell. Obviously, he was just voted to an All Star team. Good for him. I don't think anyone's shocked that he made it to the All Star team. I think it was kind of expected to. But there have been times this season and in previous seasons in Donovan Mitchell's career where he looked just like a really good player. Um, and that was about it. There have been other times, like if you remember a couple of years ago when they played the Nuggets and it was the bubble series and they took the Nuggets to 7 and lost. Donovan Mitchell looked like one of the best players in the NBA during that series. So he looked like a legitimate superstar. In this game, I know his stats don't really like it was a good game, but it wasn't like a Michael Jordan stat line. But he, watching him play, he had the confidence and the impact of a superstar. He was making confident passes. He was being at the right place in the right at the right time. He was hitting his shots. He was incredibly. He only took 10 shots and he scored 27 points. He was very effective tonight. He was just making all like he was making the right defensive moves. He was being aggressive when he needed to be. He was being a leader. Like everything that you want from a superstar, Donovan Mitchell was tonight. Um, and I don't want to say like this is the turning point and he's always going to be like that because we've seen some times where, and with any superstar, when you follow him too, Michael Jordan had his off games. Um, LeBron James has his off games. So I'm not saying like to be a superstar you need to do it every single game or else you're not a superstar, but I'm starting to see some things that Donovan Mitchell, his game is maturing. He is a lot more confident at times. He's starting to develop skill sets that he didn't have before. And so I'm really excited about his development. I think he's going to be, I think I I would not be shocked if he's a top 5 player in the league in the next few years. And that's saying a lot because there's a lot of talented young players that are looking for that spot. But I think Donovan Mitchell is starting to develop in a lot of ways that I don't think they're getting a lot of noise. I think he's going to have a breakout season in a year or two, and that's when he'll get the noise. Right now is when he's putting in the work, and we're seeing that development, though. So I'm excited to see some of these things happening with Donovan Mitchell. So, and it was kind of refreshing to see after a while we were having this talks of, oh, obviously Rudy Gobert's the most valuable player on the Jazz. Like, it's not even close. Donovan Mitchell's nice. He's a score. Like, these are all things that I said that I agreed to. And obviously Gobert's not out there, but Donovan Mitchell came in as a leader and he played like he was the most valuable player on the Jazz. Now I would love for him to keep playing that way, and then Gobert come in and keep playing like he was playing, and then the Jazz will be an extremely tough matchup in the playoffs for any team. Not guaranteed that they'll win because sometimes tough matchups still get swept, but I'm excited for what I'm seeing there. The next player I wanted to talk about, he's a center that we don't see very much of, and that's Doke Azubuike. I don't know what you want to call him, but it's interesting. We usually don't see much of him. He played a lot of minutes. He played just as many minutes as Whiteside. I believe he started. I believe so. I don't know. But he came in. He had a good game. He had 10 points, 11 rebounds, a 5 for 8 from the field. Statistically, he did what you wanted to out of a center. Plus minus, he was plus 23. Eye test, though, there are some things that I don't like. And they're not huge things. I'm not saying give up on him, that he'll never develop into a useful role player. But I don't know. There's some things that I'm not a fan of. And to be fair, if you go watch Rudy, whenever Rudy Gobert got minutes when he was a young player, which it took him a while to get good minutes. There's you can go point out a lot of things that you don't like about Gobert's game back then. So I'm not saying this is the end. I'm just saying there's probably a reason we haven't seen a lot of him, and he's still a raw talent. But he did get a nice double-double tonight. Some things that I'm seeing that I don't love, and this is purely eye test and purely just kind of the vibe that I'm getting from watching him play. So I don't know. Take it how you will. He's a little bit slower, and Gobert's not the quickest player either. And also, I realize it's unfair to compare a young center who's still developing, hasn't gotten a ton of minutes, played plenty of time in the G League, to Rudy Gobert, the best defensive center in the league right now. But Gobert's not super fast either, but he's quick. He gets to where he needs to be, and he knows where he needs to be on the floor to get to where he needs to be. With Doke, I'm not really seeing that. He's kind of slow. His reaction time, he doesn't react to things very as great on defense. And when watching him play, I can tell he knows where he needs to go, but it's not second nature for him. He has to think. He knows basketball, but it doesn't come like in a snap of it just doesn't happen where like you see really good player like watching Gobert on defense. What he reads, he doesn't have to think about it at all. It just kind of he does what he needs to do. He's done it so many times that's what happens. I'm not seeing that from Doke. I'm seeing that he knows what he needs to do, but he doesn't get there quick enough because he has to stop and think about it sometimes. Those are some things that I've noticed. Maybe your reading was completely different, but that's kind of what I was seeing. And his stats did look decent, but I feel like he's one of those players where he there are some players that are out there, and I'll talk about Rudy Gay. I feel like Rudy Gay is starting to become one of those. They're out there. They don't do anything wrong. They don't make a big impact, though. And that's kind of the feeling I was getting. That being, and this is what I'm getting from a pretty good game. He had a good double-double. He was plus 23. So I'm probably being a little bit harsh on him. and he could develop into more than a role player someday. But right now, those are some concerns that I had, and to be fair, these are things that give him 30 minutes a game for 10 games straight, and that might be ironed out. So it's not a huge deal at this point. We need to see a lot more of him before I give anything too negative about him as far as a permanent negative stamp. This is based off of this game. Yeah, but it was fun to see him. I've been wanting to see him for a long time, and we're starting to see some more of him. Um, Rudy Gay and Pascal. I kind of want to talk about both of them at the same time. I feel like Rudy Gay came in, uh, and we were expecting that he could kind of play some stretch 5 minutes if we needed to. We know he's kind of small for that, but we've seen teams play smaller players as a stretch five. We were hoping that he could come in off the bench, fill in. He's not terribly athletic, but he's athletic enough. He could bring some size onto defense, which size is big on defense, and we're hoping he could come in and hit some shots and be maybe more than a corner three guy, and another guy who could kind of be a leader on the offense off the bench. We've seen him have a couple okay games. I don't think he's had any great. His first game back has probably still been his best game, but I don't. He's come in and he hasn't really made an impact. He's not been bad. He's not been great. He's just kind of been one of those meh players. I don't think he's been living up to what Jazz fans expected of him at this time. And I know this is kind of a game recap, and I'm kind of going over a whole season for him. So not a whole season, but whatever he's played of this season so far. I feel like Eric Pascal, he's not been getting the minutes Gay has for the majority of the season. I think he's been closer to what we expected from Gobert. Um, he's come in and he can kind of ignite an offense sometimes. Like he's not an amazing scorer, but he has times where he hits that corner three and he kind of ignites some things. Um, he can get those baseline drives. He's big enough that he can work in the post just a little bit if he gets the right matchup. He's aggressive on defense. He can make some big defensive plays. That being said, he's not the most perfect player. He's definitely made mistakes, but I really like what I've seen from him. And I think he's kind of being the role of what Rudy Gay was supposed to be. So I would like to see a lot more of him. He's probably going to be the guy. He's probably going to be the guy who starts getting Joe Ingles minutes, especially. I don't know. I think he's played some great minutes. We've seen some younger guys do some good things. I'm not mad at what I've been seeing from Butler. He had 5.6 assists tonight with 4 rebounds. So I'm really happy with a second round pick and he's coming in and doing that. So I'm excited to see what Butler develops into. He's not the kind of player that contributes right now. Forrest is the kind of player who can contribute right now. He can't 8 points, 7 assists, 3 steals. He's had some other good games. So Forrest is another one of those players that's really going to be competing for those Ingles minutes. So I've liked what I've seen from him. I wish there was room on the lineup for him. I wish it made sense to play him more because I like Forrest. I think Pascal's probably a better player right now, though. I don't know Forrest's story. I'll have to look into that. That's kind of. I just know that I like it when he's out on the court. I think he makes some good plays. Obviously, like he's still kind of raw in some parts of the game, but I think he does some good stuff. Now Whiteside, I'm kind of going over it. I'm not going to talk about Hughes. So sorry, Hughes. You're going to be one of the few players on the bench that I don't talk about. And I don't need to talk about the starters. We kind of all know what we expect from them. I will give a shout out to Bogdanovic, highest plus minus on the team. And he had a really good game. Almost 19 points, 10 rebounds. So almost 20 points. So I liked what I saw from him. He had some creative passes too. He got 4 assists. But Whiteside, I want to talk about him real quick, and then we can wrap up. Um, I wish I had the graph to show you, but I saw this graphic where it's like the Utah Jazz with Rudy Gobert on the floor, defensive and offensive numbers. And then it showed the Utah Jazz with Hassan Whiteside on the floor, and it showed defensive and offensive numbers slightly worse. Not much worse. It was pretty close, but slightly worse than Gobert, who Gobert is an all-star center, one of the best defensive centers in the league. And we've talked about how he's also a pretty big anchor to the offense. But Whiteside comes in and it barely drops off. And to be honest, that drop off might just be because Whiteside's playing with the second unit a little bit more. Not that our second unit's bad, but Donovan Mitchell is better than anyone on the second unit, and Whiteside doesn't get as many minutes with Donovan Mitchell. And then it showed the stat of when the Jazz are playing small ball and they're not playing with Whiteside or Gobert on the floor, and it tanked to worst team in the league kind of numbers. So I just want to say Whiteside, he had a great game tonight, 15 points, 8 rebounds, but what he's done so far is really amazing. His stats haven't been like mind-boggling good. They've been good. But what he's been able to do for the team, he comes in, he can make plays on offense. It's not like he's going out and ISO scoring, but he can add some energy on the offensive end. He can score some points on the offensive end. On defense, he's big enough that he's not Gobert, but who is? But he's big enough. He makes it tough for other people. He's oftentimes in the right spot. He's one of those players where he comes in and he can really add energy. I think he's one of those players where you kind of know he's out there. I feel like almost every game there's been a Whiteside play that kind of stood out, and it's like that, not necessarily a turning point, but it did more. Like sometimes a block shot does a lot more than a block shot. It energizes your team on defense. Sometimes a nice dunk energizes your team on defense and helps out a lot more than just 2 points. So that's what I've been seeing from him. I know this was nothing close to a post game review, a normal post game review where I talk about the game. I gave you warning at the beginning though. Yeah, it's a blowout. There's nothing to talk about. Um, I don't like the Nets enough to talk about any of their players, so I'm not going to talk about them. And a lot of our big players are out. I didn't want to talk about the team stats this game specifically. I kind of wanted to do a player review of what I saw, and a lot of that was based off of my opinion from this game. So as you saw, a lot of it was based off of past games as well. I will say the Jazz, for some reason, are really good at winning games when they turn the ball over a ton. I think they turned it over 18 times tonight, but I don't know. Maybe there's something about them turning the ball over that makes them shoot better. I don't know what it is. It's kind of frustrating to see those many turnovers, but if it turns into a win, I'll take the win. So, thanks if you made it all the way this far. This is kind of me ranting about some Jazz players. I'm curious to hear what your thoughts are about all the players that I talked about today. Also, I mentioned we got 2 All-Stars. I think this is our first video since we figured that out. I don't remember if that came out today or yesterday. I don't know. But I did see that both Donovan Mitchell and Rudy Gobert made it, so that's exciting. But I don't know. What a way to end a video, right? Nate and I will be doing a video tomorrow morning that should be out before lunchtime Utah time, so tune in for that. I think there's a lot to talk about, so I'm excited, especially now that the Jazz have now won 2 in a row, which isn't much, but we'll take it after the start to this year so far. Yeah, I think there's a lot of fun things that we'll talk about. We haven't planned it out yet, so make sure you subscribe or follow uh, wherever you're watching this. And thanks for watching the video.